had a refreshing productive holiday. With regards to your assignment, as well as your exam will be done marking over the weekend, and you'll be able to have your feedback on Monday. Otherwise, I should behave. I think let's just get into today's lesson. I believe we finished on agents, yes? We finalized the law of agency. Finalized it. Alright, so in today's class, we'll start looking at the sale of goods. So this is basically an extension of the law of contracts. It's an extension of the law of contracts. The same contract law principles will be applied. Some things that we did in the law of agency as well will be applied when we're looking at the sale of goods. But they'll just be more or less modified so that they fit, or they'll be modified more or less to govern the sale of goods, or they'll be particular to the sale of goods, or transactions involving the sale of goods. So when we're looking at the sale of goods under commercial law, this field or this area is chiefly governed by what is known as the Sale of Goods Act. The Sale of Goods Act here. So that's the chief statute or legislation. Let's put it down quickly. As I was saying, we're not looking at transactions involving the sale of goods, or we're saying this is essentially an extension or a limb of contract law. But we've got special provisions or special legislation and principles which are particular to transactions or contracts involving sale of goods. And we're saying one of the chief statutes or acts of parliament or legislation that governs transactions involving the sale of goods is the Sale of Goods Act. And it is this Sale of Goods Act that we'll be looking at, or that will be guiding us throughout. And it will be the Sale of Goods Act that we'll be looking at when we're looking at all these principles, as well as all the other activities falling under the sale of goods. So, first and foremost, we have to be introduced to the current terms or the prominent terms in sale of goods transactions. So, our first step will be defining. So, I was saying, our first step this morning will be defining what we mean by several terms that will be encouraged throughout the sale of goods, or throughout our discussion in the sale of goods. So, first and foremost, we'll look at what we mean by the sale of goods itself. Yeah? Sale of goods contract, specific, or a contract for the sale of goods. So, as the phrase suggests, the contract for the sale of goods will be an agreement, yes, an agreement between two parties, known as the buyer and the seller, to transfer property in goods from the buyer to the seller for a price, or for a price consideration, or for a consideration amount known as the price. Yeah? So there are certain key elements that you have to take note of when you're looking at what we mean by a sale of goods contract. We're saying, first of all, we're looking at the parties themselves. So first and foremost, we're saying it's an agreement, yes? As all contracts are, it's an agreement. Second of all, it's an agreement, yes. It's not just an agreement, but it's an agreement between two parties, known as the buyer on one end and the seller on the other end, or the seller on one end and the buyer on the other end. Aside from that, it's an agreement we're saying to is it legible? What's the back? No. Is it legible? What's the back? What's written here? So it's not legible. So I'm saying it's a transfer of property in goods. Yeah. I think it's a transfer of property in goods. So key elements under what we mean by a sale of goods contract, we're saying it's an agreement. It will be an agreement between the buyer and the seller, and it will be an agreement to transfer property in goods from the seller to the buyer for what we're calling a consideration amount or the price. Yeah. So those are four key elements crucial when we're looking at or when we're discussing the sale of goods or contracts for the sale of goods. Yeah. So we're essentially saying that when we're looking at the contract for the sale of goods, we're essentially saying it will be an agreement. Yes. Essentially, it's an agreement. An agreement between whom? It will be an agreement between two parties, known as the buyer and the seller. Not only that, but the agreement will essentially be transferring property in goods between, as I said, the buyer and the seller. That is to say, from the seller to the buyer, for a consideration amount known as the price. So we'll further look into what we mean by all of these components. Yes. So we've already discussed what an agreement is. Essentially, this was essentially our discussion under the law of contract. Yes. So we won't spend much time there. When I look at these two parties, the buyer and the seller, yeah, we don't have to spend much time on discussing who the buyer and the seller is. The seller is essentially the person who's transferring the property in the goods, yes, for the price, whereas the buyer is the one who's receiving, yes, this property in goods. So the key discussion under defining sales of goods contract or a contract for sale of goods essentially lies here. Yes. This and that. What do we mean by transferring property in goods for a price or for a consideration amount known as the price? Yeah. So that's what we're looking at now. Let's start by defining goods. Yeah? So when we're defining goods, we'll be guided by the Sale of Goods Act. So basically everything we discuss under the Sale of Goods as a topic shall be found or shall be guided by the Sale of Goods Act. You find it in this legislation. Yeah? So we're essentially just repeating or retelling what the Sale of Goods Act provides for. Yeah. So all of these things, all of these components we're discussing will be found under this statute or this provision. Yeah? So we're saying this contract, yeah, this Sale of Goods contract involves the transfer of property and goods from the seller to the buyer. So we're saying, first and foremost, let's define what we mean by goods. Yeah? So we're looking at goods. What do you mean by goods? Yes. Anyway, so we're saying the Sale of Goods Act gives us a definition of what goods are. Yeah. So we're saying the Sale of Goods Act defines goods as including what are known as Can you see that I've written goods there though? Can you see? Okay, so we're saying the definition of goods. So maybe I suggest that those who are having this one is to, I don't know, find some of the closer to the front. Because otherwise, this is the value of the markers. I don't think things get any better than this. Okay, so I think just pay attention to what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm saying, under the Sale of Goods Act, or under the legislation or Act of Parliament known as the Sale of Goods Act, goods are defined as everything, including personal chateaus or chateaus, however you just pronounce it, personal chateaus, implements, excluding. So these are included in goods, except what are known as things or chooses in action. Yeah, so essentially what I'm saying, personal chateaus, these are this is a wide range of items. Yeah? A wide range of items. It could be anything from let's say this desk, a TV, goods as you understand them to be. Yeah, goods as you understand them to be. Big clothes, whatsoever. Implements, on the other hand, we're looking at crops produced by an agricultural industry, or profits therefrom. Yeah, so we're looking at things like maize, we're looking at tobacco. Those are implements. So a tree, let's say, or let's say grass. Grass does not fall under an implement. Yeah, we're looking at things that could be, or crops that could be sold. Yeah. For profit. It's commercial by the way, yeah? So we're looking at crops that could be sold for a profit. So if something, a farmer or a person or an entrepreneur can engage in farming, grow a crop in order to sell it will fall under implement. But if it's just, let's say, weed or any other crop or plant that cannot be sold for a profit, it does not fall under implement. Yeah? So we're looking at implements being crops or profits therefrom. Personal chateaus, essentially everything else, yeah? So, all of these things are falling under goods. So, goods are covering a wide range of items, yeah? So, I think, goods includes, the definition of goods includes personal chateaus, implements, minors, things or chooses in action, yeah? So, when I'm saying things or chooses in action, we're essentially referring to things such as interest in things such as, let's say, stocks or shares, things such as bonds, yeah? So, such items don't fall under goods, yeah? They don't fall under goods. So, a sale of goods will not be inclusive of selling of shares or stocks. Those do not comprise of goods. But we're saying everything else, yeah? Personal chateaus, so visible, tangible things, as well as crops, yeah? All of those are falling under the definition of goods. I don't know if it's clear there. It's not really complicated, yeah? We're saying things or chooses in action, such as stocks, bonds, etc., don't fall under goods. Crops and everything else, essentially. Goods, as you understand the word goods to mean. Those are the personal materials. Those are falling under goods, yeah? So when we're talking about a sale of goods contract or a contract for sale of goods, we're essentially looking at a sale of those items. Yeah, crops, as well as other items. It could be clothes, it could be sugar, it could be anything, textiles, etc. So that's essentially goods as defined under the Sale of Goods Act. Aside from defining what those goods are, we also have to look at the different classes, of classifications or categorizations of these goods. So when we're looking at categorization of goods, there's about 4 or 5 classes of goods. We've got what are known as existing goods. So this classification is exactly as the term or the name implies. Yeah? So these are goods actually in existence. Yeah? They're there. They're not in abstract. They're actually there in existence. They're there on the ground. We've got future goods. Yeah? So we've got existing goods. You're saying, as the name implies, these are goods actually in existence or actually materialized goods. Future goods, these are goods which haven't been produced or manufactured yet. Yeah? So when we're looking at the contract for the sale of goods, and the goods happen to be future goods, it won't be a sale of goods contract, but it will be rather an agreement to sell, because the goods aren't really in existence, but you're agreeing that once they are produced, once they are manufactured, or once they are actually in existence, the sale of goods will actually take place. So we're saying, with regards to existing goods, and all the other classes of goods we're going to look at, will be falling under the subject matter of the sale of goods contract. Whereas future goods, since they're not actually in existence, you can't have a contract for something that is not actually existing. So it won't be a sale of goods contract, but rather an agreement to sell, meaning to say, at a later date, once those goods actually produce or come into existence, we'll agree to transact or conduct business under certain terms. So existing and future goods. And then we've got what are known as specific goods. So when we're looking at specific goods, these are goods that are specified under a contract. Yeah? So we can say 10 boxes of matches. Yeah? Those are specific. We actually specified the number. I don't know if we're together there. We're saying I want 2 chairs. Those are specific goods. So specific goods actually will be existing goods, but they'll be specified. You're not just saying you want chairs, but you've actually specified as to, let's say, the number of chairs or the kind of chairs you want. Yeah? So those are specific goods. Now, a distinction has to be made between these specific goods, or rather, between these last 2 classes, ascertained So we've got those last 2 classes of goods, ascertained and unascertained goods. So when we're saying unascertained goods, these are goods actually forming the subject matter of the contract. So they won't just be specific, but they'll actually they'll be tangible. You can point at the goods themselves. Yeah. So let's start from existing goods. We're saying existing goods will be goods actually in existence. Yeah. So I can say I want maize. We all know that we can get maize somewhere. Yeah. So it's an existing good. We know that it's actually there somewhere. It's not a future good. There's no. I don't think there's any trouble understanding what future goods are. Yeah? They're not there. They'll be produced or available at a later date. We're not looking at specific goods now. We're saying you've specified the goods exactly that you want. Yeah? So you can say, I don't just want maize, but I want, let's say, 10 bags of let's say Congo maize. Yeah. So you've specified. So you want, let's say, 10, 50 kilogram bags of Congo maize. So those are specific goods. But they're not ascertained. Yeah? Because I can tell you now that I want 10, 50 kilogram bags of Congo maize. But the question will still be, where are those 10, 50 kilogram bags of Congo maize? Yeah? So once you actually find those bags, those 10 bags, and you actually have them, you can actually touch them, you can actually point at these are the bags that I'm going to sell. These are the 10 bags that I'm going to sell, yeah? Then the goods are ascertained. They're not just specific, but you actually have them in mind. You actually know that these are the actual goods that will pass under the contract for sale of goods. Whereas unascertained, they could be existing, they could be specific, but they could be unascertained, meaning to say, even though I've specified that I want 10 bags of 50 kilogram bags of, let's say, Congo maize, but the question is, it's still in abstract. Still in abstract. You don't know where those 10 bags will be gotten from or where they'll be stored. You don't even have them in mind. You can't point at them. So they'll be unascertained. I don't know if the distinctions are clear there. Or it's a bit confusing. Okay, so let's give a basic example. Yeah? Let's say I sell. Okay, no, I shouldn't say I'm selling. Yeah, but I want to buy 2 pens, or rather, I just want to buy. Yeah, I want to buy 2 pencil markers. Yeah. So I want to buy 2 pencil markers, and I want to buy. He's selling pencil markers. Yeah, he sells pencil markers. He sells stationery in general. Yeah? I want to buy those 2 pencil markers. He has 2 pencil markers. Yeah, those are existing goods. Yeah, are we together there on how those are existing goods? Because they're actually in existence. He has pencil markers in stock. Yeah. But I've just said I want 2 pencil markers. They're existing goods, they're not future goods because they actually have them in stock, but they're not specific, yeah? Because I haven't specified what color of pencil markers I want. I haven't specified the brand, yeah? So they're existing, they're not future, but they're not specific yet because it's still in abstract. It's still in abstract, yeah? So those are existing goods. Those 2 pencil markers are existing goods. They'll be specific when I say I want 1 black pencil marker, 1 black pencil marker, the other one should be blue, of this brand, this whiteboard, this Monami brand, yeah? So I've specified the brand, I've specified the colors, I've specified the number. Yeah? That's specific. But we're saying they're not ascertained. Because myself, let's say, as the buyer, I can't even go to say, or if somebody would ask me, where are those 2 pencil markers, or where will you get them from? As of yet, we haven't ascertained which exactly out of all the pencil markers he has in stock that I want. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. It will only be those petrol markers only be ascertained goods once I actually go to his store and I say, I want those two petrol markers. So both him and I know that these are the two petrol markers that were actually passed under the contract. Not any other petrol markers, but these two petrol markers. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, it's like you've put in instructions to go and buy, let's say, a box of matches. It's an existing good. It's not specific because you don't know which brand. So let's say I send you out to buy a box of leopard matches. Yeah, it's an existing good. It's specific, but it's not ascertained because the question would be which box of leopard matches are you buying? Yeah. So you say I went to a Hoka or an express shop where Super is in or by Wandiro, and I want that box of matches. So when it's actually identified that this here good is what's actually going to pass, so this here good is actually what's going to be delivered from the seller to the buyer, then it becomes ascertained. Yeah, because up until it's ascertained, you can't point to what that good is. It's just an abstract, it's just an idea. Because you know that I want a box of matches, it has to be a leopard brand, but you still don't know which box of matches you're going to get. So the point whereby you can actually point that box of matches, you can actually see that this is the box of matches that I'll get. That's when that good becomes ascertained. Yeah? So what we're saying by ascertained goods, we're actually saying those goods were that good. So you can actually point that it's not just an abstract description. Because if it's just an abstract description, it could be from any vendor, it could be from any seller, it could be at any place in the world at any time. But once you can actually say that it's a box of leopard matches that I'm getting from Henry, who runs the super range in Area 15, then it's an ascertained good, because you can actually go to the store and say, this is the box of matches that I want to purchase. Yeah? I don't know if it's clear, the distinction between specific and ascertained goods. Who wants to try to explain in their own words what we mean by ascertained goods? Anybody would like to attempt to explain what we mean by ascertained goods? Or let me just ask a question to let's say there's a scenario. There's a scenario whereby I want to buy a watch. Yeah, I want to buy a watch in town. Is that an existing good? Yeah, it's an existing good, yeah? It's not a future good. I can actually get a watch in town, yeah? Yeah. Is it specific? No. Okay, so I want to buy, let's say, a Rolex watch. Is it a Rolex watch for, let's say, 500,000? Yeah? Is it specific? Yeah. Is it ascertained? No. Why? Exactly. It's still in abstract. Yeah. We still don't know which watch exactly that we're talking about. Yeah. So once you actually go to the store and say, I want that Rolex watch for 500,000, then it's ascertained. Because you can actually point that that's actually the product or the item that will pass from the seller to the buyer. Once you can actually point at that item, then you've ascertained or determined which item exactly. It's not just in abstract, they're not just words anymore. You can actually see the good or the product itself, that this is what's going to pass from the seller to the buyer. They're not just words, they're not just specifications. You can actually see that this is actually the item. It can actually be stolen. Somebody can actually come to say, I've taken this item. And you can say that the good I wanted has actually been stolen. But otherwise, if I say I want a Rolex watch for 500,000 and somebody steals a Rolex watch worth 500,000 in Morocco. Is that the watch I wanted? We don't know because it wasn't ascertained yet. It wasn't ascertained. But once I say this is the Rolex watch for 500,000 that I want, you could actually see it. Somebody could actually come and steal it, and you could say the watch I wanted is stolen. Then it's ascertained. I wonder if it's clear there on the distinction between specific and ascertained goods. Is it clear what you mean by ascertained goods? You can actually point to say that's the good, that's actually what's going to pass under the contract. Yeah? So it could be an existing good, it could be specific, but it could be an ascertained. It could be an existing good specific, but ascertained as well. Whereas future goods would be future specific, but they obviously will be ascertained because they are not actually in existence yet. Yeah? I wonder if it's clear here what do you mean by all those categorizations, all those terms here. From existing to an ascertained goods. Is the distinction clear?
Yes.
We can move from this. Okay, so we're still, by the way, defining components or the terms under what we mean by the contract for sale of goods. So we're saying the contract for sale of goods is an agreement between two parties, the buyer on one end, the seller on the other end. And the agreement entails passing of property in goods, and we've looked at what goods are, what they comprise of, the categories of goods. So it's an agreement to pass property in goods from the seller to the buyer for a price. Yeah. So I think price. What do you mean by price is clear. Yeah? It's essentially a money consideration, a monetary consideration. So it could be fixed in the contract. It could be fixed by previous course of dealing. So you usually go and get remains from an individual for a certain price all the time. So there's no need to actually say today's price is this. It's been fixed, even though it hasn't been expressly communicated. Because of the previous course of dealing, we can actually say that this is, in fact, the price. Of course, you also consider the economic environment or the economic climate at the time. So we're saying a contract for sale of goods is essentially an agreement between a buyer and the seller to pass property in goods from seller to buyer for a price or a consideration amount known as the price. Yeah. And we've looked at goods, and now we have to look at what we mean by property itself. Because there's that phrase, there's that phrase in the definition. A transfer of property in goods. Yeah? So we've defined what goods are. So let's now look at what we mean by property. So we're saying this contract or a sale of goods involves the transfer of property in goods. Yeah? And I know property usually in common parlance or in normal speech, we understand this to be something tangible. Yeah? You could say that this is my property. Yeah? But in law, property is not. It's not a thing. Property is. I think it was also in this class we looked at this. Yeah? We discussed that property is, in law, when we talk of property, we're not talking about a thing, we're not talking about a house, we're not talking about land, we're not talking about a TV, we're talking about a bundle of rights. Yeah. So in law, when you hear the word property, nobody's talking about an item. We're talking about rights. Yeah. We're talking about rights. So I say it will be a transfer of rights in goods. It will be a transfer of a bundle of rights in goods. These bundle of rights are essentially, you can understand it to be ownership itself, yeah? So when you say a sort of goods contract involves the transfer of property in goods, essentially say it involves the transfer of ownership in goods. Yeah? So we're not talking about property in goods, we're saying ownership in goods, yeah? The ownership over certain goods. So this word property is more or less synonymous with ownership. So essentially saying a set of goods contract involves a transfer of ownership, yeah, the transfer of ownership in goods from one party to the other. So we're saying somebody will pay a certain amount, or known as the price, so that that ownership is transferred from one party to another. Yeah, from the seller to the buyer. So when you go to the store to buy a box of matches, what you're essentially buying is not the box of matches, but the ownership over the box of matches and the contents there. Yeah, meaning to say it's no longer the seller's; it's now mine. So that's essentially what's happening when you're transacting in the sale of goods. You're transferring ownership from one side to the other. You're not just buying, you're not just taking the item, but you're taking the goods in that you're taking the property in that item as well. Yeah? So I'm saying property is a bundle of rights, chiefly comprising of ownership as a right. Yeah? So there are also other related items, yeah? Not in the definition, but other related concepts or terms we have to look at when we're looking at the sale of goods contracts. I don't know if it's clear here what we're trying to say. Yeah? On transfer of property goods. Who would like to assist our colleague in explaining what we mean by a transfer of property in goods? Any member of the class to explain that phrase? Anyone to explain this? In front here, would you like to explain what we mean by transfer of property and goods? Just be audible, everybody should benefit.
This is more like...
Let's listen. That focus over there, let's listen.
This is more like it's trying to change in ownership. When you're trying to purchase something, the transfer of property and goods is more like a change of ownership in the goods. If you're maybe buying something, because since in commercial law, property is regarded more like a bundle of rights. So these bundle of rights are transferred from the buyer to the seller.
Or rather vice versa, from the seller to the buyer. Is that clear? Will you try rephrasing it? So that's audibility.
Transfer of property in goods is like change of ownership from the seller to the buyer.
Yeah. So that's what we're saying here. That when you're paying that money, what you're paying for is a change of ownership, essentially. It's the same thing that happens when you purchase a house. Yeah, you don't say I'm taking this house from Lilong, I'm going with it to Kasung. You just change the title deed. You just change the ownership of the house. Yeah, it's the same item. Nothing changes. Well, the only thing that changes is who owns it. who gets to renovate, who gets to maintain, who gets to decide whether they want to sell it or burn it to the ground or demolish it. That's what we're transferring here, yeah? So we're saying we're transferring that bundle of rights, and that bundle of rights themselves, or that bundle of rights itself is in actuality ownership over the goods themselves, yeah? So we're essentially saying a sale of goods contract essentially involves paying money for a transfer of ownership. That's all a sale of goods contract is, yeah? You're paying money for a transfer of ownership in a sale of goods. That's all we're saying in the definition of a sale of goods contract, yeah? So we're transferring the property or the bundle of rights or the ownership from the seller to the buyer of those goods. I hope it's clear here. This phrase, what we mean, what we're talking about when we're talking about a change or a transfer of property and goods. Is it clear? Yeah. So that's that on the definition. So as I was saying, there are also related items you have to look at when we're looking at the sale of goods. So we're talking about the transfer of property. We're talking about the transfer of rights or ownership from the seller to the buyer. Yeah. So this is what is known as passing of property, meaning to say the passing of ownership from seller to the buyer. So we're trying to look at what are some of the elements, or what exactly is comprising of this transfer or passing of property. Yeah. So we're saying first and foremost there's the issue of ownership. Yeah. Ownership that moves from seller to the buyer. So when we're looking at passing of property, we're looking at the transfer of ownership of the goods from the seller to the buyer of those goods. Yeah, we're looking at when we're looking at the passing of ownership, we're also looking at the passing of title. Yeah, so we're looking at the passing of title, meaning to say who exactly owns, who's the owner of these goods. So the passing of title itself